So who among you would trade 8 to 12 minutes a day to gain 4 to 9 hours per week? And actually, it's a much better trade than that in the long run because we're going to change how the organization thinks about a lot of things. But everybody's going to take that deal. Every single person. If I said you take 8 to 10, you're going to take that deal. All right. So how does that happen? Well, the first thing we got to look at is what takes so much of our time that we can change. And I'm telling you, there's three things. I call them time wasters. And yeah, that's a picture of a meeting. And I'll bet you guys all thought about that. And energy takers. Now, the most common energy taker, in my opinion, is interruptions. It's pretty amazing. IBM did a study, and they found that for every time somebody gets interrupted for 30 seconds, it costs them 23 minutes of productivity. And that probably is not a surprise to you. And the last one is frustration makers. Now, I think one of the biggest frustration makers, and yes, it's my opinion, is missed deadlines. Because when somebody misses this deadline and there were 10 other things that were dependent upon it, everything gets pushed back. And when something isn't your responsibility or it's out of your control and you have to move what you were planning back 2 or 3 times, that's incredibly frustrating. Okay? Missed deadlines is a big deal. Now, if we could reduce every one of those by 25%, we can save you 4 to 9 hours a week. Easy. Probably more than that. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to break those down a little bit too. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is meetings, obviously, because most studies show that for the average manager, they spend between 25 and 40% of their time in meetings. It's amazing. So what makes our meetings such time wasters? The first thing is clarity. We don't know what the heck those meetings are for. You sit there at a meeting and ask, what's the purpose of this meeting? And nobody can find it written down anywhere. And most people, if you ask 10 people, you're going to get 5 different answers unless they all listen to the first one. The second one is we love to talk, but we don't like to make decisions. That happens all the time. And the next and last one is, again, we love to talk, but we really would much rather talk than do the work. And I know the pictures may be a little bit extreme, but we'd rather talk than do the work. Taking action is making decisions and taking actions where you offend people or you have to take responsibility for something. It all gets a little scary because as long as we talk about something, nobody really has to get in trouble for anything. All right. All right. So what are we going to do about that? How do we fix it? It's not as hard as you think. Because the real good news is that our meetings are repetitive. And yes, you heard that right. Meetings are repetitive. We have the weekly this and the daily that and monthly this and all that kind of stuff. When our meetings are repetitive, that means, here's the reason that's a good thing, is if we design it right, we fix it right, and we take a meeting and we make it just 25% shorter and 25% more productive, we multiply that over every time that meeting repeats. That's a big deal, okay? So the meetings being repetitive is huge as long as we plan them right. All right, next thing, we're going to use checklist. Airline pilots, airline mechanics, they use checklists like crazy. And why is it? Because checklists do 2 things. You don't miss anything, and you can get through it in a hurry because you don't have to think about what you have to think about. Do the same thing with a meeting. Imagine you go into a meeting and that meeting has a clear purpose, and then you've got this checklist. We need to cover these things. Well, usually about 80% of the things that meeting is designed to cover, especially a repetitive meeting, you only need to talk with about 20% of them or make a decision or take any action on 20% of them. The other ones, we just have to check. Does anybody want to have to do something with this? So we create a checklist for a meeting. You go down there and you boom, 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 and it creates the agenda, which it doesn't really create the agenda, but we'll get to that next. Use checklist. You don't forget things. You cover what you need to cover in a hurry. We're going to do that. Okay. And the last one is that darn agenda, and I use that word, and what does an agenda mean? I mean, really, seriously, for you guys. If I say the word agenda, what's that? So things you're going to talk about at a meeting. Talk. All right, we're going to replace that agenda. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to create task, because tasks lead to action. And we're going to start saying things. We're not going to say things like, let's talk about the marketing billboard out on whatever that may be, we're going to say, let's decide on what billboards we're going to place where, what month. Okay? Two totally different things because we're not talking about it. The goal is to decide it, and it's in there as a to do item with a due date of that meeting date. It'll get done. All your meetings being run that way is going to create this bias for action. There's a work management system built into this system that makes it very clear when things don't get done. And because you have a meeting that's well planned like that, there'll be so fewer times that somebody walks in your office and asks a question or whatever it may be, because they'll just bring it up at the meeting, which is what they're supposed to do, and it'll work. You'll cut your interruptions in half more than likely, probably more than that even, but 25% is easy. That's like falling off a log. All right. And then you're going to create this bias for action, and everyone will know when something's late, and people will stop being late, and it'll drastically reduce your frustration. That's how we're going to get you a lot of time. All right. Now, next up, we're going to talk about why that matters, why that makes so much difference to teammates, and it keeps everybody around.